Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Montana Shares. Today I have Bernie with Disability Rights Montana with me. Welcome, Bernie. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me, Bill.
Oh, our pleasure. I think it's a great opportunity for the people to find out about the nonprofits that make our state so great. So tell us about Disability Rights Montana, what you guys do, and kind of give us the quick version and then the in-depth version of it.
Okay, well, Disability Rights Montana is a civil rights organization on behalf of Montanans with disabilities. We started in 1975 when Congress felt that it was really important that people with disabilities have advocates and legal representation. Congress, through an expose in Willowbrook in New York, realized that people with disabilities were the most vulnerable citizens and needed to have independent advocacy. So since 1975, since that law was passed, Disability Rights Montana has been designated as the protection and advocacy system for the state of Montana. So there's actually an agency like ours in every state and territory in the country.
Okay.
So that's the short version of who we are.
Okay. And now let's go into a little more depth on it.
Well, so who qualifies for our services? I think that's one of the things that people say, well, who do you serve? We can serve virtually every person with a disability in Montana. Now, the reality is 17.4% of Montana's population are people with disabilities. And so that's roughly about 150,000 people who would be eligible. And clearly we can't serve that many people. We're a small private nonprofit. We have a small budget. We provide statewide services. And those services that we provide for people we provide information and referral. So any person can call us up and say, could you tell me what the law is with regards to landlord-tenant? I have a service animal. I want to be able to have my service animal in my apartment, and the landlord is telling me no. They can call us up and we will provide them with information about what their legal rights are. We also provide a service called short-term assistance. And that's when a person with a disability qualifies for our services and they need a little bit of help in resolving their problem. So let's go back to that landlord-tenant scenario. We gave that person the information. They tried it. It didn't work. They can come back to us and they can say, I tried it. It didn't work. So maybe what we do is we write a letter or we call up the landlord or we go and visit. It's a short-term service that helps to get the person with the disability, their issue resolved and on their way to living. So that's a second service. A third service that we provide is we actually provide advocacy, where we will have a lay advocate, someone that is trained in advocating for someone, and they actually go to a meeting and advocate to resolve an issue. So that same scenario with the landlord, the simple short-term assistance didn't work. They needed to have somebody actually go, start writing letters, documenting the process, and assuming that advocacy doesn't work. The next step would be legal representation, where we actually provide a person with a disability a lawyer to help them resolve that case. A lot of people think of Disability Rights Montana as just a legal organization, and we do litigate, but that's pretty much the last tool in our toolbox. We want to do things by way of information. We want to train people give them education about their rights. We want to assist them in resolving problems at the lowest level possible. But I haven't exhausted what we do. One of the biggest services that we provide is training and education. We go around to communities and we sponsor training events. So as an example, one of the big initiatives that we have right now is people with mental illness, really the opportunity for them to put together what is called an advance directive. You and I, we probably have a living will or something for our lives. Well, people with mental illness often haven't had representation or haven't had the opportunity to write down their wishes. And people with mental illness have some very unique issues that they're dealing with. So we actually have a really very thorough initiative that we're doing right now, in which we're going around to communities and we're meeting at mental health centers and we're gathering people with mental illness and educating them about their right to have put together a advance directive in the event that they become incapacitated. They end up with an episode in a hospital. And it talks about what are the types of medication work well for me, what doesn't work well for me. It's about their wishes. If I go in the hospital, I have a service animal. Please have so-and-so take care of my service animal. It's a very thorough document that helps put that advanced planning in place. And it's a service that isn't available anywhere else. And so this is a really big initiative that we're doing right now, and we're hoping that folks really take us up on it. So that's another example of a service that we do. You know, the other thing we often do is many of our clients are residents of residential or institutions like Montana State Hospital or the Montana Developmental Center. Oftentimes, people who are in those sort of residential or institutionalized services don't know what their rights are. So we go and we have a presence, a regular presence in these facilities where an advocate staff will go and walk around and talk with people and check in to see how they're doing. And if they have questions about their rights, we assist them. And so one of the other publications we do along that whole educating is we have produced a book called The Rights of Montanans with Mental Illness. And this is something that is really, really popular in terms of people wanting to know, okay, so what are my rights if I am involuntarily committed or if something happens to me? I just wanted to point out to you, Bill, one of the things, we just did a new run of this book, and we were so happy to be able to put the Montana Shares logo on it.
The new Montana Shares
logo, that's right.
You bet.
So a lot of our time is spent on educating family members of people with disabilities and people with disabilities themselves. So to prevent the down the road, those sort of adversarial situations, giving people knowledge is so very important about their legal rights.
You sort of took the question out of my mouth. Really, I'm assuming that you spend a lot of time with the families.
We do.
Because they're probably also advocates for the family members that have a disability.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, our organization is, you know, we have clients, and so the client is often the person with the disability, but it is about being able to communicate with families and helping families understand what's available to them and what their rights are. It gets a little tricky sometimes when you have an adult with a disability and you have a family member and they aren't necessarily on the same page and they want different things. So we spend time trying to educate the family member and the person with the disability so that, you know, they can work that out. The reality is those are long-term relationships, and we want to make sure those are strengthened and those stay intact. So.
And so part of me is a geek. It's just who I am.
Okay.
If you had to kind of assign a percentage to some of these various areas of what you do, the education, litigation, the advocacy work, do you have a ballpark idea on what you kind of spend in those various areas?
I do. I think we spend about 30% of our time on education. And then we spend about, I would say, about 40% of our time in some kind of advocacy and litigation. And then we spend the remainder of our time in policy work, which is something I didn't talk about. You know, our staff can solve the same problem over and over and over again. And we're like, geez, if we could just go to the legislature and change a law that could affect many people, that's far better in terms of being efficient. So as an example, we have someone at the legislature during the legislative session, and then we're working throughout legislative sessions to identify the laws that impact people with disabilities. As an example, hunters, you know, there's a whole set of rules around people with disabilities and their ability to access areas of hunting and what those rules are like. And that's something that we were involved in assuring that that was done in a way that whatever new hunting laws were enacted weren't going to adversely impact people with disabilities. So, you know, we get involved at that level. It's from hunting to involuntary medication to, I mean, the whole gamut of what we do, seclusion and restraint. But we just find that by spending time with legislators, explaining to them the impact a particular law will have if it's passed on people with disabilities, makes very good sense for us to spend time doing that. So that's another part of what we do. So did I answer your question in terms of proportionately what we do?
Yeah, it's just a curiosity, but I think you really, the point of changing legislation is an efficiency issue for your organization to make
absolutely.
your organization far more efficient and serve the community that you serve that much more efficient as well, I'm gathering from doing that work.
And sometimes how we do that is we get a case and we say, wow, this is a pretty, these facts are pretty remarkable, and I think people need to know about that. So what we do oftentimes is we write reports. And like this is an example of a report that we wrote. And this is a report about a man that we found locked in a basement and was being restricted. His rights were being restricted. And what we also found when we did this investigation is that every system in place that was supposed to support him and help him, keep him safe, keep the community safe, allow him the opportunity to live an integrated life, failed. And so what we did is, we can, file lawsuits, but we decided that the most efficient thing we could do is tell the story. So we wrote the story, the facts, told the story, identified all the laws that were broken and how they could have, in fact, been used to utilize a better living experience for this man. We did also get the opportunity to move him, so he's in a different environment. But this report was used as a way to help inform legislators and help policymakers about, geez, what failed here and what can we do differently? So we write reports as also part of our the services or the function of our job.
Okay, so if someone thinks that they need your services, that they feel that they're being discriminated against or whatever the case is, what's the process for getting involved with disability rights?
Well, there's a couple ways that people can get in touch with us. They can call us, they can write us, they can go on our website. But one of the things that's, it isn't limited to the person with a disability. A parent can call us and say, I have a child in special education, the school's not providing the appropriate educational services, can you please help me? A guardian can call. Sometimes state officials call and say, I just saw this happen. Do you folks look at this? We have confidential informants. So anybody can call us and we will take that information. They can write us, or like I said, our website has on the website you could actually fill out a form and we look at those forms every day.
Okay.
So, but one of the areas, and I wanted to just hit on as I started to hit on, was education. There is a real need for parents with children with disabilities to really know what the laws are with regards to the responsibilities of the school district. What does the school district and the schools have to provide for my child? And that is one of the areas that's actually a very big caseload. Our entire budget could be utilized assisting parents in understanding and getting the appropriate services for their child. That being said, we actually only have 2 staff that work in that area. Right. So one of the things I didn't talk about is we are a statewide organization. So in terms of accessing us, we have an 800 number, so anybody can call us from around the state. And we travel. So even though our main office is in Helena, we have a small satellite office in Missoula. But we will travel throughout the state and meet with people and talk with them and see what we can do to help resolve their issues.
Okay, wonderful. And so right now we're in the thick of campaign season, which is probably this vernacular that not lots of people don't know. It's the time of year where people in workplaces get to go and fill out a form and tell where they want their money to go. I've been picking up school pledges this afternoon. We're in the final week of the State Employees Charitable Giving Campaign. What's your relationship with Montana Shares and how does that support the mission of Disability Rights Montana?
Well, I think Montana Shares is just absolutely fabulous. It gives Disability Rights Montana an opportunity to have more statewide exposure through the campaigns. I also think it gives people the opportunity to give us donations, which we absolutely enjoy and really value that. The funds that we get are restricted and we only can use them for certain types of activities. people would give us donations, and it's an opportunity for us to do other sorts of activities. Particularly, I love the fact that you're in schools right now, because schools are the folks that are utilizing the school administration, and the teachers and the parents are the ones that are utilizing our services. And so I think that's really great. The other thing about Montana Shares, which I think is really important, is the whole concept of you folks help to keep us accountable in making us a stronger nonprofit. In terms of the requirements to be part of Montana Shares strengthens us. And I think that that's a really important service that Montana Shares provides for its members.
Okay. And so one last question. In a perfect world where you could just wave a wand and have some group or part of our state or society call you up and say, we want you to come educate us on something. If there's sort of a hole in this whole picture, who would you want to call you up and say, we want some education on this?
I would want the school districts, the school district administrators to call us up and say, please come tell us what our legal obligations are to provide an appropriate education to all students, and particularly those with disabilities. I think there's a tremendous amount of room for educators to to know more. I think they're very well intended. I think budgets are short, and so it makes it difficult for them. But that's the group that I would definitely spend time with.
And we're not talking just Helen, we're talking
Statewide.
Statewide, any administrators, any educators that
Statewide, absolutely.
would make your day if they called you up and said, come educate us.
They do occasionally, but I think that if we did that statewide, that would just be fantastic, because that's, families need support. They really do, so.
Yeah. Any final thoughts that you want to add to this?
Well, I just really appreciate the opportunity. One of the things that I think is that people with disabilities need information. They need to know what their rights are, and if we can provide that opportunity, we want to be there to do it, and we want to do it in multiple ways. So if anybody hears this story and wants to contact us, I think that's great. I think people with disabilities are a big part of our community, and they should be integrated in every possible way.
You bet.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I love this show because it's an opportunity. We often try to live on 25 words in a brochure or something like that.
Right.
And so now we get 20 minutes and we get to find out, a lot more about an organization, a lot more in-depth information, and I appreciate you coming on. And I appreciate all the viewers that tune in and listen to this program so that they can find out what we do and what the nonprofits around the state do. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a great evening.